and take advantage of the most vulnerable, and take advantage of your family who will do anything. We played on people so incredibly bad. I just want them to know it's not a rehab, point blank, and it could kill you.
Okay, guys, this is Sam. Sam is going to help us out here with information. Part of the information that we're after here is the Scientology claims that it doesn't meddle in medical affairs. And unfortunately, this is very far from the truth. And one of the Scientology front groups is called NAR-CON-ON. And NAR-CON-ON is a group that deals specifically in helping people, or so they say, to overcome drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and other types of abuses. And well, they charge a lot of money for this, and they say they don't make any money out of it. It's a charitable organization, which, well, we know better. It's far from the truth. But I'd like to introduce Sam, because Sam worked at one of the major centers in the States, in Los Angeles, in LA, right next to the Celebrity Center. She's dealt with high-profile people, and she will tell you her story, and she will relate, just exactly how the financial system works there, because she carried the checks. So, hey, Sam, so you were there.
I was there for about 2.5, 3 years. I was an operator for 411, which was an information. If back in the old days, if you wanted a phone number for somebody, you could call 411, and I would be the operator on the other end. It was out of Torrance, California, and we got calls all the time for people calling for the Church of Scientology, and I was always like, "What the hell is this?" But I got in a conversation with one guy that called asking for the number, and he was a staff member, and now that I think back on it, he opened with the lines, do you want to help people? What are you doing working as an operator? You could be so much better qualified to be, really helping mankind. And I thought, I thought at the time his vocabulary was a little over the top, but I went and I met with him, and I signed a contract, I believe that day or the next day. I thought I was working for a drug rehab. I thought that I was going to get training that I could take to any other rehabs in the state, and maybe some type of credentials or counseling. I wasn't sure. I was only 20. I had just turned 21.
Wow.
I didn't know what I was doing, but it very quickly became obvious that it was not just a rehab. I was sitting inside the ED's office, the director's office, after I had signed, and I picked up a copy of Dianetics, and I just started flipping through it. And everybody in the office jumped on me and was like, "Don't do that. You can't do that. You need a dictionary. You don't understand what you're reading." I'm like, "This is a load of shit." And I kind of like threw it over my shoulder. And they kind of had their work cut out for them from that point on.
Yeah, I think they have. So, Sam, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
You weren't actually a Scientologist, right?
No, not at all.
No. So you were recruited to work for NAR-CON-ON. But when you were working for NAR-CON-ON, did you discover any links between NAR-CON-ON and Scientology itself, per se?
From the very beginning, absolutely. We had, you had to live on site. You couldn't live, if you had an apartment, you had to give it up and come live on site. At the time, I was living with my father because I had just gone through the earthquake in San Francisco in '89, and my apartment had been destroyed. So I'd moved to Southern California, and so it worked out for me that I could move, that I could live there. And from the very first morning going to muster, the hip hip and the clapping, and I thought, what the fuck is wrong with these people?
Wow. Because, like in Scientology every morning, right, at 9 o'clock, and Doug will know this as well, they have a muster where everybody goes in and stands up and claps to L. Ron Hubbard or David Miscavige, as it might be now. And you know, it's like it's normal practice in Scientology. These musters.
All right? Good. So, anybody you talk to, just out, that you're talking to, get them to the event, get them to bring somebody in, whatever is appropriate. Get them in here on their schedule. We're trying to get 2 SRD comes this week, which is major. All right? We have a lot of good things going on, but it needs to all be pulled together.
So the NAR-CON-ON was run over basic Scientology principles, right? The same basic construction.
Absolutely. The staff were either graduates of the program that had no other job opportunities at the time and latched onto it, which is what you want them to do, and what your stats go up if you get someone to sign on graduation night. Or they were people that were illegal and couldn't get into the Sea Org. So they would send them to Narconon to work as staff.
Scientologists.
Yes, they were all Scientologists, except for the ones that had just come off the program. When I got there, everybody was a Scientologist. The ED, everybody. They were OT. I didn't know anything about OT. I didn't know anything about any of it. And then, I don't even know where to start. I was going to be the course supervisor. So I had to go through all the courses, and I had to start with the communication course. If I'm going to deliver it, of course, I need to know what I'm doing. And I think I tried to blow about 18 times the first day, and they weren't having it. And walking into the course room, and there was nothing on the walls except for that one picture of Hubbard that we all know. And I knew right then, this is just not, something's weird. I twinned with the CS because they wanted me to go through the GRs and the communication course, and it was a nightmare. I just couldn't imagine. And then I kept trying to correlate, how is this helping people get off drugs? It's making me want to go fucking get high or drunk, Oh, well, that's just a turn on. That's just they were using language I didn't understand. And I was looking at there were students there. Patients there. They called them students, doing it or trying to do it. You could tell the ones that were detoxing. You could tell the ones that were kicking. They couldn't sit still. They were sweating. If they had to vomit, they had to literally turn around and vomit and turn back around and start. And I couldn't wrap my head around it. I get asked, why didn't I leave then? And I'm not a quitter. And I figured there was some good to it. And I just didn't know what the good was. And I wasn't so pompous that I thought I knew everything. So I just figured, see what this is all about. How bad can it be if we're helping people get off drugs and alcohol? Little did I know, it was terrible. The way we treated people, the way we treated their families, and the way we took advantage of them is just unheard of. But anyway, back getting my own training, I was sent to Shilako for training, but came back with having to do more training. I ended up at Big Blue just for half sessions. It really wasn't effective because I wasn't able to spend as much time on course as I should have. But I did end up getting my student hat. I went through, the communication course, the OWs, the co-audit. I did the peer of 3 times, not 3 times, 3 times the EP for weeks. These are ruined because of it. Yeah, I have all the medical I've got a lot of medical issues from my kidneys that affect the rest of me, but there's no other reason for it. I never would have put 2 and 2 together myself. Didn't understand. My blood pressures is I have RHT, it's resistant hypertension. I'm on 4 or 5 different blood pressure medications, heavy hitters that don't touch it.
Wow.
I mean, I'm sitting here right now at stroke level. I'm always at stroke level, but it's just the way I have to operate.
It's like, with what you were saying, right? Now, I mean, what we were talking about earlier is the detrimental effects of some of the Scientology practices where they say they don't meddle in medical affairs. But somebody that is dealing with people in this state, this very vulnerable state, who need proper medical attention, right?
Well, they're not
Okay,
getting
and
it in
then
Narconon. We weren't medically trained
they're not getting it in NAR-CON-ON, that's for sure.
on people.
But the thing that amazes me is to get around the problem. What Scientology does, it doesn't call them patients, it calls them students, right? Because this legally means they can't be held accountable, because legally they're not practicing medicine, because they don't call them patients. But in actual fact, this is a medical procedure. And if you're going to pump people full of thousands and thousands of milligrams, because we're talking thousands of milligrams of niacin, right?
Oh, yeah.
And vitamin C and vitamin B complex and B12, and Doug, you might remember you got handfuls of pills. They were slowly increased daily, more and more and more, and put on a treadmill.
And the CalMag, we can't forget about the CalMag. We all had that. It's this disgusting drink
but the
that
thing
you have to take
the
at
thing
the
I want to mention here that's really important is what Sam just said. The after effects sometimes aren't discovered for many years. So how can you then go back and blame the Church of Scientology years later and say, oh, this happened because of what you did 10 years ago or 6 years ago or 5 years ago, right? Because, getting that into court is just a nightmare.
Especially if you have a history of doing drugs and abusing them. I mean, the first thing that comes up is, well, what about this? What about all that heroin you did? What about all that crack you smoked? What about, it's not, the Purification itself is dangerous. However, when people came into Narconon, we took their medications. You were not allowed any medication whatsoever. We had people that would have grand mal seizures because but they weren't allowed their epilepsy. I can't even think of the name of it. With that alone, people were losing their minds, let alone going through DTs. And our detox was a room upstairs with a mattress and a mattress against the wall in case they wanted to hit themselves against the wall so they wouldn't hurt themselves.
Suicide watch.
We had QMs that you were awake all night running detox watch. I had no fucking training. None of us did. We had never had a CPR course. We never had first aid. We never had the Red Cross come in and make sure we knew what to do, let alone detoxing people off of alcohol and heroin and these huge, I'm 4'10", and I would be alone with a guy coming off of heroin or a guy coming down from, off of alcohol. And my only tools I had were touch assists, body comms, and we would take them to Dr. Dank. But it's not a Scientology thing, but
that's L. Ron Hubbard's doctor.
And, he would give them their B shot, sign them off, and then I would say, what happens if this guy dies? And, Dr. Dank would look at me like I was, who is this chick and why is she asking me these questions, first of all? A nightmare from A to B. And reason I stayed, looking back, I would say I was a Scientologist from day 3 or 4. I mean, I really, I don't have any type of recollection of rational thinking.
They made you into a Scientologist, and that's why you feel like, looking back at it, you were kind of under a spell, right?
Knowing what I know now and thinking logically and going through what we did over and over and over, the repetitive, the hours, the weeks, the days, 12, 14-hour days, constant, Alice and I are like this, and it's, I can't, if I see Alice in Wonderland, I want to fucking scream, but it's...
Yeah, me too.
Me too. Like I said, it's one thing to do it with people that want to be there and know what they're signing up for. Maybe I'm not even going to say you know what you're signing up for when you go to an org, because you really don't. But at least you have some clue. These people just wanted to get off drugs. There was no 12-step. You never hear the word addiction. You never hear the word, enabling it, there's disconnection right and left. They write their OWs, I would read them. I read things that I didn't know were humanly possible. I would have to go through sect checks and ethics and this and that.
It amazes me so much because it's run along Scientology lines so closely. I mean, it's almost like being in a Scientologist org, not a drug rehab at all. So, like, you know, this old adage where people say it's not true, but we've often called this out. We've said that Scientology's NAR-CON-ON is the bridge to the bridge, right? This is a way to get people into Scientology. Did you find that when people were completing their time in NAR-CON-ON that they were pressured into joining the church as such?
Yeah, your job was to get them to route into their local org. Lucky enough that I had a car, so I was often the one to go to the vitamin store. I was the one to go take the checks up to Able, to Int, I mean, I was on Sunset Boulevard more often than I was in my own course room, probably some weeks.
Delivering checks.
Taking checks.
Paying Scientologist front groups from NAR-CON-ON.
Yeah, paying our dues to Able, to Wise, to Bridge.
But Scientology says they don't make any money out of NAR-CON-ON.
Well, Scientology says a lot.
Scientology says an awful lot, doesn't it, honey? Huh?
Yeah,
God,
they didn't pay us. We were treated just like staff anywhere. We got pay based on the stats of the org, even though we were charging $30,000 per person at least.
At least.
I thought it was only 10,000.
Yeah.
Oh my.
That most people who paid the 30,000 when they were nearly finished the course, they were forced to do a rerun and pay another 30,000.
Yeah,
get the fuck out of here. No. Is that true, Sam? Who would come up with $60,000 if they were a drug addict? I assume this is their parents paying, right?
Their parents. I've taken women to the banks and had watched them sign over their mortgages twice. We had no scruples. When it came to regging, they fired me from regging the day that I could not close Kurt Cobain.
What was he doing there?
He wouldn't come in. He was too high. But she called, and somehow...
Courtney?
Courtney called, and I was sitting in the lobby because it was like a Friday night or something, and a couple of us were sitting around before graduation, and the reg wasn't there. I don't remember what the situation was, but the ED genie... No, Clark Carr was there, and Clark said, you take the call to me. And I was like, what the fuck? Okay. I can sell the program, sure. At least I can get them in the door for the reg to then sell the program. I knew I could do that much. So I'm talking to this chick for a while, and she's like, yeah, well, my husband, he does hair, he does smack, and he does a lot of it, and he's going to need and I was like, okay, well, we can help, not a problem. Can you get him down here? Or do we need to come to you? And she's like, oh, no, I could probably get him there, but he's going to need VIP treatment. And I was like, right. Okay. And this is like 91. It was, and then she goes,
the plot thickens, huh?
She said,
yeah, wow.
Questions. And I said, well, we really don't do VIP. If you're an addict, you're an addict, but we can certainly come down and talk to him in your place, so you don't have to worry about getting him in the car and this, that, and the other. If you're worried about people seeing him, walk into the hellhole on Olympic Boulevard, And she's like, okay, well, it's Kurt Cobain. And I was just like, all right, just kept going. I did go out with a guy named Eddie once to their house. I had the car, remember? So my Honda, and I drove to their apartment. They wouldn't come to the door. She opened the door. You could see him like smacked out on the couch, completely out of it. We never managed to get him in the doors. I think we got put in either doubt or enemy for that failure. The last time they tried to call her, the reg was like, you do it. She talked to you. You had good comm with her. You try it. And so I called, and they had the answering machine came on. This is like old time, right? And the answering machine message said, it was him, and it said, "We've gone to a deserted island, and we won't be returning your call." And I left a message just saying who I was and, talk to you soon.
This is a perfect example of how a celebrity could accidentally get into Scientology. They could come in like Kurt Cobain for drug rehab.
Yeah.
And before you know it, 3 months later, they're spouting Scientology and their friends are going, what the hell? Why did you join that cult?
And failure not to get him. It was huge.
You could have hypnotized you in his state of mind. You could have hypnotized him and made him into a Scientologist in a month, and Kurt Cobain would have been out there selling Scientology as the biggest artist. Well, think John Travolta, think Tom Cruise. So yeah, I can more than imagine. Did you feel like you were really helping people? What kept you from not getting the fuck out of there once you knew it was Scientology?
This was before the internet. Or you could go look up things. There were maybe 2 books in the library, Bald-Faced Messiah and something else. There was no information.
Right.
If I had known half or even an nth of what I'm able to find out now, or would have been able to find out, I would like to say it'd be a different story. But they had me hook, line, and sinker. I believed in, I can't say I believed in the tech, because the day that the Time magazine article came out, I went and I stole it from the thrifty store. And I took it back, and I was a QM that night, and I snuck it into the org. I snuck it into Narconon, which we call the org, and I read it in the Purif during my QM. I got about maybe 3/4 of the way through the article, took the magazine, flipped it up, started screaming, "What the fuck?" CS, who was up in his ivory tower, Les Moore, came running down. He's like, "What is going on? You're going to wake everybody up. What is..." And I had the time. And I was like, "What is this? What is this? What is this bullshit about aliens?" And I was on the next plane. That's not true. Within 2 months, I was sent to Shilako and separated from my 2D. I jumped ahead too far. But that's how I found out. If I hadn't found that out, I probably would have kept going along with it, even though I wasn't getting these wins. But I would look around, and I hear a lot of this now, and be like, well, if he's getting it and she's getting it, what's wrong with me that I'm not, wildly happy and having these huge successes? So I kept thinking it's coming, or I'm doing something wrong. It always came back to me.
Yeah, that happens to all of us, I think.
And when the LA riots happened, it was the first time that I really went against KSW. I mean, outwardly. My boyfriend and I lived in the Ardmore. It was staff apartments off of Melrose and Ardmore Avenue. And we had an apartment there because we were upstat, and we did a good job of what we did. The riots broke out, and John Duff, who is now the president of NAR-CON-ON, but at the time was just a ex-Sea Org member running an apartment building for staff. He came and he pulled my boyfriend out, and he said, "Okay, everything's on fire. The entire fucking world's on fire from the looks of it. Get up on the roof, and we're doing hose watch." And they sat up there all night and hosed because the fires were jumping. I mean, it was, I don't know if you were in LA at that time, but it was a nightmare. It wasn't just a mob scene. It was the entire city. You couldn't find a gas station that hadn't been burned down. You couldn't find a liquor store. You couldn't find milk. You couldn't find anything that hadn't been robbed, looted, or burnt to the fucking ground. I was supposed to report to staff, to post. And we didn't have a phone. And I went and I knocked on the manager's door down the hallway, John Duff's door. And I said, "Can I use your phone? I'm not going in. I'm not going out there. I'm a white girl. I'm not going to walk down Melrose and Crenshaw to get to work or drive and get pulled out of my car like I just saw Reginald Denny get his head kicked in. I'm not doing it." And he was like, "You're not going to post?" I was like, "No." Well, about 20 minutes later, my ED walked in the door, No, I'm sorry, Qual. Kathy from Qual walked in the door and said, "Pack a bag." And I was like, "Why? Where are you? What am I going to Narconon to sleep for a few nights until this blows over so I can be on post?" And she just like, "Pack a bag. You'll be gone a couple days." She took me from the apartment to the org. From the org, within a couple of hours, I was in LAX on a plane to Oklahoma, to Kansas City is where I got off. I was sent to Narconon Schlaco for an ethics handling. So great was my crime of not wanting to show up and refusing to go to post because of being the course supervisor and because I had too many people that I could communicate with. I had lines with the students. I was too dangerous. I was suddenly the reason why our stats weren't up. I was, it was like, oh, we found the SP. They kept me in Chilocco for 3 months. I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks in. I was not allowed to speak to my boyfriend. I was not allowed to tell him I was pregnant.
Wow.
I never spoke to him again. They fed me 3 plates of ground beef a day and a rotten cantaloupe. I had a twin that was on me constantly. I had no access to a telephone. I had no access to anything. I was allowed to shower once a week. I had no way of leaving. If you ever look up Chilocco on a map, it was an old Indian reservation, or not a reservation. It was an Indian school, a boarding school back in the 1800s or early 1900s. It was literally 37 miles to Ponca, which is the nearest gas station. There was no way to leave. There was nowhere to go. But I was starving. My body started caving in on itself. I know that they were trying to get me to probably have a miscarriage. They never asked me if I wanted to go have an abortion. They never said anything except for, "You're going to go sign up for food stamps and give us the card." That never happened for some reason. I did manage to get a hold of a phone, and I called the one person that I knew that would help me, and whose phone number I knew, and her name was Marjorie Leckler, and she had been a student at Narconon LA and had finished the program and gone back home to Ohio. And I called her and I said, "You got to get me out of here." And it was a very quick process from that point, but I wasn't able to continue with phone calls to her, so it was just kind of like, "You got to get me out. I don't know how I'm going to talk to you again or when." And she was like, "Okay, I'll do whatever I can do. Call me in a couple days." Well, I couldn't call her in a couple days. When I did call her back, she said, "Okay, I'm going to call this church in Newkirk, Oklahoma, which is Kirstie Alley's hometown." Chilocco, by the way, was Kirstie Alley's gift to her hometown.
Great.
That was important. She had gotten hold of a Vineyard Church, and she said, "Be at the dorm on Sunday. They'll be there." And I'm like, "They can't just come pick me up." But I was like, okay. I mean, I had no choice. I saw the car come in. It was an old Rabbit, and a huge Native American Indian, got out of the car, followed by a minister. And I'm thinking, this is a fucking, like, what the hell? I was filthy. I had a backpack. No, my backpack was in my room, and I had an overnight case because I was only going for a couple of days. And he's like, "Where's your stuff?" And I said, "It's in the dorm, but there's no way we can go in there. It's Sunday. People aren't on post. There'll be students everywhere." And he was like, "Come on." And I was like, "No, they'll stop me. They're not going to let me go." And he was like, "We got Jesus on our side." And I thought, "You fucking idiot. Like, you got to be, this is the worst. Like, that's the last thing I wanted to hear. Like, oh, great. He thinks I'm crazy." And we went in the dorm, and there was nobody there. There was nobody around. We went straight to my room. I locked the door behind me, closed the door so that they thought I thought they would think I was in my room and not come looking for me immediately. They drove. It was about a 2-hour drive to the airport. I was hankered down in the back until we got off the premises, and They're like, okay, you can sit up. We stopped at a Hardee's, and I think I ate the entire menu. We got to the airport, and he said, here's your ticket to Ohio. And I said, I want to go back to California. I'd never been out of California in my life until that point. And he's like, the ticket's for Ohio. Do you want me to change it? And I was like, no. And I went to I got in Columbus and stayed there for the next 25 years. Had my baby, raised my baby, never saw the father, never found him because he had been deported. It was just a shit show.
I'm just like stunned. Remember, Sam's a staff member. Okay. She didn't have, she wasn't the one with the drug problem. She was a fucking staff member, and she barely escaped Narconon with her life. Sam, I'm really sorry to hear that. I didn't know your story. William, what do you want to say, man? Can you relate to anything?
Yeah. But what freaks me out here, Doug, okay, and I think the public should keep an eye on this. Sam wasn't a Scientologist, but they felt they had the right to false imprison her, practically kidnap her, and lock her up in a Scientology institution and force her to go through an ethics handling, right, which must have been as rigid as hell, as Sam knows, and you and I both know from experience. But she wasn't a Scientologist for that, and I signed up for that, but she didn't sign up for that.
Students didn't sign up for it. Pardon things, because I did some really shitty things to people, and I lied some lies, and not some. I treated people like crap that needed help, that wanted nothing more than to go home to their children or their husbands or get their job back or be able to look at themselves in the mirror. And I did fuck all to help them. Honestly.
It's okay. It's not, it's not your fault though. It's not Scientology's fault. They roped in you helping them and all. I understand what you're saying, but they didn't know it was Scientology. You didn't know what you were getting involved in. I didn't know what I was getting involved in. William didn't know the scope of what he was getting involved in. None of us signed up to be psychologically tortured, to have our money and our family taken away, and to go through what you went through. None of us signed up for that. Nobody would sign up for that. That's why they have to fucking lie.
That's right.